My name is Claudine Mercer. I am 72 years old. A retired school teacher who still bakes from scratch and remembers every birthday on the calendar. People who know me would say I am steady, the sort who keeps her voice calm even when tempers rise. I believed that age had made me unshakable. But on the afternoon of my son's birthday, all of that certainty slipped away. Daniel was turning 44, and I had spent the morning in my Charleston kitchen making his favorite chocolate cake. The recipe was old, the frosting thick with butter and cocoa, the kind my granddaughter Lila always licked from the spoon when she visited. I carried it carefully through the garden gate and up the brick steps of Daniel's house, expecting the same warm welcome I had come to treasure. Inside, voices rose in cheerful chatter, the scent of barbecue heavy in the air. My arms ached from holding the cake, but my heart beat with anticipation. I pictured Lila bursting from the crowd, her golden hair bouncing in braids, calling, "Grandma Claudine." She had done it at every party since she could run. But she didn't come. I set the cake on the counter and searched the living room. Children darted between legs. Music hummed. Adults laughed too loudly over wine. And there, in the corner, I saw her. Lila sat small and hunched, wearing a pink baseball cap several sizes too big. Her chin pressed to her chest. Her hands folded tight in her lap. I crossed the room, my heart quickening. "Lila, sweetheart," I said softly, "why don't you come give Grandma a hug?" She looked up at me. Her eyes, usually bright as Carolina sky, were dulled with unshed tears. Her lips trembled. "I can't take off my hat." She whispered, "Of course you can." I reached gently for the brim. She flinched, but didn't stop me. The cap slid away, and I froze. Her beautiful hair, the hair I had brushed and braided 100 times, was gone, shaved to the scalp, jagged patches showing raw skin. For a moment I couldn't breathe. My knees weakened as though the floor had shifted under me. Before I could speak, a laugh rang out across the room, sharp, deliberate. My daughter, Maris, raised her glass of wine and smirked. "Oh, Claudine, did you see Lila's new look? It's just a joke. My name is Claudine Mercer, 72 years old, grandmother of one precious girl, mother of 2 grown children who sometimes feel like strangers. I've spent decades teaching children to respect one another, to handle words and hands with care. Yet here, in my son's house, my own daughter spoke as if cruelty were comedy. Maris sipped her wine, her painted nails tapping against the glass. She never wanted to wash her hair. "Mom," she said with a laugh that cut deeper than her words. So I solved the problem. Clean scalp, no tears. Simple. The room shifted. Relatives avoided my eyes, focusing on their plates, their phones, the food table. I stood holding the pink cap in my hand, my granddaughter pressed against my side, her small shoulders trembling. "You shaved her head." My voice shook. Sharper than I intended, Maris rolled her eyes. A dismissive flick. "Don't make it dramatic. It's just hair." Those 3 words hung in the air like smoke. Daniel appeared from the kitchen, balancing a tray of glasses. He set them down too quickly, wine sloshing over the rims. His eyes met mine, weary and impatient. "Mom, please don't start. It's just hair. It'll grow back." My son, the boy I raised on bedtime stories and Sunday hymns, the man who used to bring me dandelions from the yard, now standing before me defending humiliation as though it were nothing. Lila clung to my dress, her fingers digging into the fabric. I could feel her heartbeat racing against my hip. I swallowed hard, forcing steadiness into my voice. "She's 7 years old. She's not a soldier, not a criminal." Maris gave a careless shrug, laughing again, the sound brittle and sharp. Kids need discipline. You coddle her too much. The chatter in the room tried to swell again, as though nothing had happened, but my ears rang with the refrain, "It's just hair. It's just hair." Words that stripped away dignity as surely as the razor had stripped away those golden strands. I held Lila tighter. If no one else would stand for her, then I would. My name is Claudine Mercer. I am 72 years old. A woman who has weathered storms with quiet resolve. A grandmother who has always believed tenderness is stronger than harshness. Yet, in that crowded room, I felt powerless, standing with a trembling child pressed to my side and the sound of my own daughter's laughter still echoing. Maris raised her glass again, swirling the wine as if the cruelty she had committed was a triumph to toast. She never wanted to wash her hair. Mom, always crying when I tried to comb it. This way, no more tears. Discipline and convenience in one. I heard a murmur ripple across the guests. Eyes slid away. Heads bent lower. No one spoke. I could almost hear the clatter of forks against plates above the silence. People choosing comfort over confrontation. I bent slightly, holding Lila closer. Her shaved head rough against my palm. "She's only 7, I whispered, though my voice shook. "She's a child." Daniel stepped into the doorway then. His shirt sleeves rolled up, his face flushed from the heat of the kitchen. He glanced at me, then at Mary's, and shook his head with an exhausted sigh. "Mom, please, don't turn this into something it's not. It's just hair. It'll grow back. My son, the boy I had nursed through fevers. The man I thought I could still trust to see his daughter's pain." His words cut sharper than I imagined they could. "It's just hair," Maris repeated, smirking. "You coddle her too much. She'll thank me one day." Lila's small hand gripped the fabric of my dress until her knuckles whitened. I could feel her heartbeat quicken, pounding against me like a drum. She wasn't thanking anyone. She was terrified. I held her tighter, my jaw set, the air in the room turning heavy and close. If no one else would look past that refrain, then I would. My granddaughter's dignity was not something to laugh over or dismiss. I leaned down, kissed her damp cheek, and guided her toward the hallway. We needed a door closed between us and the rest of them. I guided Lila down the hallway, the noise of the party muffled with every step. My hand rested lightly on her shoulder. The fragile weight of her body pressed close, as though she feared I might let go. I opened the bathroom door, flicked on the light, and closed us inside. The fan hummed softly, the only sound between us. She climbed onto the closed lid of the toilet, legs swinging, eyes fixed on the tiled floor. Her cap was still in my hand, the brim damp from her sweat. I crouched down despite the ache in my knees, placing myself at her level. "Tell me what happened, sweetheart," I said gently. "Grandma just wants the truth." Her throat bobbed as she swallowed. Tears welled, but she blinked them back, as if afraid to spill them. "Mommy was mad yesterday morning," she whispered. "She said my hair was dirty, that I was a filthy girl." I shook my head. Only days ago, I had braided her golden strands, clean and shining. "She took Daddy's machine," Lila continued, her voice breaking on the word, "the one he uses to shave his face. She mimed holding something heavy, moving it roughly across her scalp. She told me to stay still or she'd hurt me worse." My stomach tightened. "And you cried." She nodded quickly, then pressed her hands to her face. I begged her to stop. She said ugly girls cry too much, that if I didn't stop, she'd cut my eyelashes so I would look like a monster. The words struck me like a physical blow. I reached out, gently pulling her hands away, and cupped her cheeks. Her skin was hot from the effort of holding in sobs. You are not ugly, I whispered fiercely. You are beautiful, always. Her shoulders shook then, silent tears spilling at last. I drew her into my arms, her thin frame trembling against me. This wasn't a bad haircut or a moment of impatience. This was cruelty sharpened into punishment, repeated until fear had replaced trust. I held her tighter, feeling the weight of her secret settle onto my chest like iron. Lila's tears still dampened my blouse as I led her back down the hallway. The sounds of laughter and clinking glasses swelled again, careless and bright, as if cruelty could be hidden behind music. I held her hand firmly, the pink cap dangling from my other fist like evidence. The moment we stepped into the living room, conversation faltered. A few relatives looked up, their smiles fading as they noticed Lila's swollen eyes. I stood tall, my voice cutting through the uneasy silence. Maris shaved her head. I said, the words felt jagged, but I forced them out. She threatened to cut her eyelashes if she cried. Do you think this is discipline? Look at her. Gasps broke from the cluster of cousins near the buffet. My sister-in-law pressed a hand to her mouth. Someone muttered, "Dear Lord," under their breath. Maris laughed, brittle and sharp. For heaven's sake, Mom, don't be so dramatic. Kids exaggerate. She's always been oversensitive. Lila pressed herself closer to me, as though those words might strike her. My fury rose, hot and steady, across the room. A man stepped forward, Jonathan Hale, the next-door neighbor, who had been invited with his wife. He was tall, broad-shouldered, a retired Navy man known for plain talk. His face was etched with disbelief. I saw the girl when we arrived, he said loudly, his gaze fixed on Maris. She was shaking like a leaf. That's not exaggeration. That's fear. The room stilled. A few guests nodded uneasily. Others shifted away from Maris, as though not wanting to be associated. Maris's eyes narrowed. Stay out of this. Jonathan, this is family business. Hurting a child is everyone's business, he shot back, his voice carrying the kind of authority honed over years at sea. I felt the weight in my chest ease, just slightly, for the first time that day. I wasn't entirely alone. Yet the room itself seemed to fracture, half turning toward me and Lila, half pulling back into Maris's orbit of denial. I steadied my granddaughter's hand in mine, bracing against the division that had only just begun to show its cracks. The room buzzed with murmurs after Jonathan's words, but no one moved. The air felt heavy, as if we were all waiting for someone else to decide what was right. I looked down at Lila, her small fingers clutching my hand, her body pressed against me for protection. Her scalp was still raw, her eyes swollen with fear. That was enough. I straightened my back. She's coming with me, I said firmly, louder than I had meant to, but it cut through the tension like a blade. Maris's laughter cracked. Don't be ridiculous. This is my house, my child. Sit down and stop making a scene. Daniel stepped forward, his face tight with embarrassment. Mom, please, you're ruining my birthday. Don't drag her into this. My chest burned, but my voice was steady. I'm not ruining anything. What's been done to this child is the real shame. I reached for Lila's small backpack by the coat rack, pink with worn straps. I didn't ask permission. I slipped her cap back on and held her close. Maris's voice rose, sharp as glass. You're not taking her anywhere. Yes, I am, I replied. The calm in my tone surprised even me. Daniel's hand hovered as if he might stop me, but his arm fell limp at his side. The room had fallen silent, except for the clink of ice melting in forgotten glasses. Relatives avoided my eyes, but a few stepped back, clearing a path without a word. I walked toward the door with Lila tucked against me, behind us. Maris shouted, Daniel's voice joining hers in frantic protest. But the sound only faded as I opened the door and stepped into the cool Charleston evening. For the first time that day, the air felt clear in my lungs. I tightened my hold on Lila. There would be no going back by the time we reached my little house on the edge of Charleston. The sun had dropped low and the cicadas were singing. Lila clung to me as I unlocked the door, her backpack hanging loosely from her shoulder. Inside, the familiar smell of lavender polish and old wood seemed to calm her, though she didn't let go of my hand. I made her a bowl of soup, but she only pushed the spoon in circles. Her eyes kept darting toward the window, as if someone might come to take her away. After coaxing her into the guest bed, I sat beside her until her breathing slowed. It wasn't long before the nightmares began. She twisted under the quilt, whispering, "No, Mommy, please, I'll be good." I stroked her shaved head, murmuring softly, "You're safe, darling. Grandma's here." But her body jolted with each dream, small fists tightening around the sheets. When she finally stilled, I stepped into the hallway, my chest tight. I needed proof of what had been done. In the bathroom, under the bright mirror light, I lifted the cap from her head again. Thin red scratches marked her scalp where the razor had scraped too close. I photographed each one with shaking hands, forcing myself to be steady. Then I picked up the phone and dialed an old friend, Dr. Evelyn Harris, a pediatrician I had taught with years ago at Sunday school. She answered on the second ring. I told her everything in a low voice. Every detail Lila had confessed. Evelyn listened, then said firmly, "Document everything. Bring her to my office tomorrow. We'll start a record." I hung up and sat in the darkened kitchen. Pen and paper before me, I wrote down times, words, even the way Lila's hands had trembled. From the other room, a small voice broke the silence. "Grandma, can I stay here forever?" I closed my eyes, gripping the pen tighter. Forever. Such a small word, yet heavier than any promise I had ever made. The banging on my front door jolted me awake. Pale light was only beginning to touch the curtains, and Lila still slept, curled against me, her breaths uneven from another restless night. I slipped free of her arms and stepped into the hall, my heart pounding. When I opened the door, Daniel stood there, his face drawn and his eyes bloodshot. Maris hovered behind him, her hair disheveled, anger burning in her stare. "Where is she?" Maris demanded, trying to push past me. I blocked the doorway with my body. "She's sleeping," I said firmly. "And she's staying here." Daniel raised his hands, torn between pleading and authority. "Mom, please, don't do this. Bring her home. You can't just take her." "Take her." My voice trembled, but I kept it steady. "I'm protecting her. Look at what you allowed." Maris spat the words like venom. "You're poisoning her against me. You've always meddled," behind her fury. Daniel's shoulders sagged. He lowered his voice, so quiet I almost didn't hear. "Please, give my sister a chance to live." His words cracked, heavy with something like shame. The sentence stopped me. He wasn't defending his wife anymore. He was pleading for her. And in that moment, I saw his loyalty tearing him in two between a woman he had chosen and a child he should have defended. I stepped back, closed the door just enough to shield the hall from their view, and walked to the telephone. My hands shook as I dialed Elias Mason, a lawyer I trusted. When his voice came through, I didn't waste a breath. "I need your help," I said. "It's about my granddaughter. I can't let her go back." The courtroom smelled faintly of polish and old paper, a place where lives were measured in testimony and judgment. I sat at the long wooden table. Lila's small hand folded into mine, across from us. Daniel avoided my eyes. And Maris, her hair smoothed and her dress pressed, wore a mask of composure. Judge Whitaker entered. A silver-haired man with a voice that carried, the bailiff called the case. And suddenly, the air was too thin to breathe. Dr. Evelyn Harris, the pediatrician who had examined Lila, spoke first. She described the marks on her scalp, the anxiety, the nightmares. Her words were calm, clinical, but each one felt like a stone laid down in a foundation I desperately hoped would hold. Then came Dr. Colton, the child psychologist. He leaned forward gently, his voice measured. This child shows clear signs of psychological trauma fear associated directly with her mother's actions. Maris bristled, her voice sharp as she broke in. It was discipline. Children need rules. It wasn't abuse. The judge silenced her with a look, then turned to Lila. My granddaughter's feet barely reached the floor, but her back was straight. "Do you feel safe with your mother?" he asked. Her voice was so small I thought the room might swallow it. "No. With Grandma, I'm not scared. She never calls me ugly." The hush that followed pressed against the walls. Even Daniel bowed his head, his hands twisting in his lap. Maris stared at her daughter as though she didn't recognize her. The judge scribbled notes, his expression grave. For the first time, I allowed myself to believe that the truth, spoken in a child's trembling voice, might finally outweigh denial. Judge Whitaker's gavel struck once, the sound echoing like a final chord. His words came measured, each one deliberate. In the best interest of the child, temporary custody will be granted to Mrs. Claudine Mercer for a period of 6 months. During this time, the parents may have supervised visitation. Both parents are ordered to attend mandatory therapy. The weight of his decision filled the room. My grip on Lila's hand tightened, her small fingers curling back around mine as though she understood more than her years should allow. Maris gasped, her composure cracking. 6 months, she cried, her voice sharp, rising against the paneled walls. "You can't take her from me that long?" The judge's gaze was steady. "This is not a punishment. Mrs. Mercer, it is a protection." Daniel sat stone still beside her, his jaw clenched, eyes fixed on the floor. He hadn't spoken since the testimony ended, and his silence cut deeper than any outburst might have. I felt relief flood through me, but it carried sorrow in its current. Relief that Lila would not be sent back into that house. Sorrow that it had come to this, my own daughter fighting me, my own son too paralyzed to stand for what was right. As the bailiff called the next case, I gathered Lila's things. She leaned against me, exhausted, her cheek pressed to my shoulder. We walked past Daniel and Maris without a word. Outside, the Charleston sun felt too bright, the courthouse steps too steep beneath my feet. For the first time in weeks, I allowed myself a long breath. 6 months of safety lay ahead, but the echo of the gavel still rang in my ears, reminding me that safety was borrowed time, never permanent. Weeks passed with the rhythm of small, careful days. In my house, life softened into routines that stitched themselves around Lila like a quilt, predictable, warm, steady. Every evening after dinner, she sat before the mirror on my vanity stool while I rubbed a little coconut oil into her scalp. I told her stories as I worked. Fairy tales where princesses lost their crowns but discovered new strength before the gold ever returned. At first, her head was only a patchy fuzz. Delicate as down, she would study it in the glass with furrowed brows. Asking, "Will it ever look pretty again?" I always answered the same. "It's already beautiful, because it's yours." Slowly, she began to smile at her reflection instead of shrinking from it. Bedtime became our sanctuary. She chose the stories, sometimes the same one 3 nights in a row, and I read until her eyelids grew heavy. The old nightmares came less often, replaced by giggles when she whispered her own endings to the tales. Laughter returned to her voice, light but sure, and I guarded every sound like treasure. One morning, I woke her before dawn and packed a blanket into the car. We drove to Folly Beach, where the Atlantic stretched out, restless and endless. We spread the blanket on the cool sand and watched the sun edge up from the horizon. The water caught fire in its light, and Lila leaned against me, her short golden curls glowing. "Grandma," she said softly, "it feels different now, like I can breathe again." I kissed her forehead. Salt air in my lungs. The tide rolled in, steady and certain. And I knew healing was not just hers, but mine. Too, love is a gift. Respect is the receipt. Without both, the purchase fails. If respect were the only inheritance left, would your family treasure it or squander it like dust?